Hey guys, this is Jonathan Lampel here from Blender HD, and in the last tutorial I showed you how to shatter glass based around the point of impact. And while that, does create some decently realistic results for some types of glass, other types of glass they don't quite fracture the same. Say if you dropped a glass jar on the floor, it wouldn't shatter quite like that, and if you shattered, reinforced glass like triple pane or something like that, it still wouldn't shatter quite the same. So in this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to fracture reinforced glass and, just different types of glass, so not only different ways to do it, but also how to get the most realistic result. Because if you applied the last tutorial to all kinds of glass, it, wouldn't give you necessarily a good result all the time. So here I've just set up the scene that we had in the last tutorial. The key difference is that I have the 3D cursor set to the center of this object, which you can easily do by pressing Shift S and cursor to selected. And that's, the only thing that's different. I just scaled in the cube, added that, parented it to the plane, and Shift S cursor to selected, and I'm ready to go. So just like last time, all I'm going to do is hit self fracture, change this to child vertices just like last time, and maybe increase that to 0.5, and this time I'm going to be using cursor close. And what this does is it applies the recursion to the shards that are closest to the cursor. So I think last time we used big, and that shatters the 50% of the largest shards, but this time I'm going to be using it to the how close it is to the cursor. Pretty self-explanatory there. So just like last time, I'm going to take that to 0, uncheck apply split edge, and fracture. Okay, looks like I forgot one thing. Sorry about that. I forgot to add a little bit of noise, because when we're doing this for reinforced glass, we do need some noise. So I'll just go through self fracture, child vertices. You can try own vertices sometimes, or if you'd like, but sometimes it does give you some weird results where it cuts the plane in half, so I try to avoid that if I can. So I'm going to change that to 0.1, and that'll give us a little bit bigger fractures around the sides there. And I'll just change that to 200 just to be safe. Settings like last time, and let's try that one more time. Okay, so you can see here the noise is giving us a kind of a wider radius of smaller shards, which for this we want, because what we're going to do is, since this is kind of reinforced glass, it's going to punch a hole through it. So we're just going to take all of the surrounding glass, make it passive, and just punch a hole straight through it. So I'll show you what I mean here in a second. So, ideally you might have a few more pieces here, but you don't really need any more around the outside. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take all of these, make sure that one is selected, and in the rigid body tools, hit add active. And if you play this back, you can see that it works right. All the margins are set correctly. So what we can do now is go into the physics tab and enable deactivation and start deactivated, and then finally copy from active. So it's going to start deactivated, and won't start the physics until something collides with it. So I'm going to use the sphere that was on the first layer, just hit M and move it over to the second layer. And since we want it to punch through this glass, it's a little bit big. The hole, maybe it would fit. It'd probably be pretty close, but I'm going to scale it down just a little bit so that there's a little bit of kind of overlap. And then going into side view, just like last time, I'm going to take it all the way over here, insert a keyframe for location by pressing I and location, moving to frame 10, moving it back there, hitting I and location. Then finally I'm going to make that a rigid body, and on frame, I guess it's already on frame 10. On frame 10, I want this not animated, so I'm going to hit I while hovering over that. And then on frame 9, I do want this animated, so I'm going to check that, hit I while hovering over it. And if I play this back, it works pretty well, where the ball, comes up and it bounces off the window. And it looks pretty good, but we obviously don't want the whole window falling down. So all we have to do is select these outside here. Make sure that one is the active object by selecting it, and then just change it from active to passive, and finally copy from active. So then if we play this back, see that the ball kind of hits the window, shatters it, and falls down. So it's not really going through it like it would glass, but the only reason for that is because we haven't changed the mass of the ball. But you can see that it is reacting kind of like you're punching a hole through the glass. A lot of the times you'll get these cracks running out here that'll appear in the shading, which is, it is what you want. And, you get all these tiny shards that drop down. So this is perfect, and, depending on what you want, maybe if you want a bullet shooting through there, you could change this to, say, something really high like 500, and it'll just kind of shoot straight through and just create a really big hole there. Or if you want it, not too big, maybe like a baseball or something, change it to 10, and it just kind of shatters it and falls down. So you can do whatever you want with that, but that is how you shatter reinforced glass and create those kind of holes inside of it without it reacting with the surrounding glass. Alright, so that's that, and the next thing we're going to do is shattering a cup. So on this layer here, I've modeled a really simple cup. You can model basically whatever cup you'd like. If you have troubles fracturing your cup, then just refer back to my fracturing complex objects tutorial, and it should tell you all you need to know about creating clean fractures. And so for this, you can see it really is a very simple model. It has, a little bit of subsurf added to it, but I want this to fall on the floor. And if you've ever dropped glass on the floor accidentally, you'll notice that it shatters it has really big shards and then some really small shards around the point where it shattered. And that's kind of what we did earlier, but for a cup it's going to be a little bit different. So what I'm going to do is hit Shift S. I'll do that on the next layer actually, but I'm just going to set cursor to center right now so it's easy to add objects later. For this, I think I want it to drop on its kind of like that. It's going to drop right on the top of it. It's going to shatter right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to Shift A, add a UV sphere, move it up about there, and then Shift select that, Control P, set parent to object, and just like with the other glass, what we're going to do is take this and self-fracture it, but instead of having 100 or whatever, I'm going to only add 10. So it's only going to have 10 vertices. Make sure it's set to child, and noise, I'm going to keep that at 0.1. Actually, no, I'm going to leave that off. It is kind of a subtle difference. You can play around with it, but basically what the noise does is it adds a Voronoi pattern to it. So it doesn't necessarily make it more noisy, but it makes it more Voronoi pattern-like, and sometimes that's what you want, and sometimes it's what you don't want. So you just have to judge which kind of effect you're going for. With glass, I'd leave this as low as possible. Definitely don't turn it all the way to 1, but 0.1 is sometimes okay, but for now I'm just going to leave it to 0. Alright, so next, the important part is recursion. I'm going to set that to 1, make sure that's set to 0, and I'm going to set it to cursor close again. Of course, I forgot to do that, so that is too bad. Shift S, cursor to selected. If you find yourself using a lot of these presets or a lot of these options over and over again, and you don't really want to go through and change them each individually, what you can do is just change your settings. Say here I want to, want 5,000 shards, a noise of 1, and a recursion of 1 on big, and say I use that all the time. Then all I have to do is just press this little plus here, name it something, I'll I'll just name mine test because I don't actually want to use it. Save that there. And then even if you exit out, do whatever, and you go back to self-fracture this object, you'll still find your presets here, and they should be exactly what you had before. So yeah, so obviously I don't want that, but that was just a little example because that can be really handy if you're doing different materials. So you could have a preset for glass, preset for wood, etc. Okay, moving on. I think I changed this to 15 or something like that. Recursion to 1, cursor close, and set this to 0.5. Since this is a smooth object, you want to keep apply split edge because if you have that, it keeps the smooth shading, which is really nice. So you can uncheck this when it's kind of a flat shaded object, but make sure that it's checked when it's smooth shaded. And I'll just go ahead and fracture that. And I'll look at it here. Okay, so you can see that I've got a few big chunks here and some small chunks here. Now it's not perfect. You might have to go through and play with it a little bit, but overall this is pretty close. Maybe I should have added that 0.1 noise or 0.05 noise, but this will do for now. So I'm just going to go into side mode, press Shift S, cursor to center, Shift A, add a cube, scale it along the Z-axis, scale it, Shift to Z, scale it along everything but the Z-axis, and then press Ctrl A and apply scale. Then I'm going to make this a passive rigid body, and then take these shards here, make sure one of them is selected, press Add Active, and let's see what it does. So if we play this back, it just kind of flies apart, and it doesn't work very well. And the reason for this is it's set to convex hull. And what convex hull does is it doesn't really account for the holes or different things inside of the mesh. So sometimes when it's a little bit overlapping, you have problems with this. So I could try setting it to 0. Sometimes that'll work. Make sure you press copy from active after every time. And if I play that back, it still kind of pops out. So let me try changing this to mesh, copy from active. And that looks even worse. So I will just do everything I can remember to do. Press Ctrl A, apply scale. That doesn't fix it. Oh, I know what I did. It's interacting with this window and ball because they're on the same collision group layer. Even though they're on totally separate layers and not interacting at all, they're on the same collision group, and they're messing with each other. So this is actually a good thing that it happened, so I can show you how to avoid it next time, because it could be pretty frustrating if I spent all day trying to fix it and all I had to do was change the collision group to say second layer, copy from active, change that to the second layer as well, and play it back. So that works well. So you can see here that if I just change that to a different layer and then played it back, it's going to pass right through and it's not even going to affect it. So if you have lots of different collisions on different layers, just make sure they're set to a different collision group, and then you should be all set. Okay, so I'm going to change this back to convex hull and disable collision margin. Make sure all of it's selected. I don't think it was. Yeah. Convex hull, copy from active, and play it back. Okay, so that worked pretty well. I think a few pieces fell through, but that's okay because we can fix that later. And it looks pretty good because you have you have it breaking into small chunks where it hit, and then you have those big chunks. But then one other thing is that it's not really hitting like glass would. It's not really shattering, because when you play this back, it just kind of plops down and falls apart. It doesn't really, glass kind of shatters and bounces. So an easy way to fix this is just select your objects there and then change the bounciness up to, say, 0.75. Copy from active, change this here to 0.75. You'll notice that if I set this to 0 and play this back, it doesn't really have much of an effect, but if I set the floor bounciness up a little bit, then it really does start to bounce. So you don't want to set it too high, but just see wherever you think it's realistic. And yeah, I think that's a little bit better. Okay, so next what we're gonna do is, well, let's think about constraints, but we don't really need it for this object here. I'll definitely be showing that to you in the next tutorial on how to fracture wood, because constraints are really necessary for wood. But for glass, you don't really need it all that much. You can just rotate this however you want, fracture it, and yeah, I think that's all I wanted to cover. Basically, this was just an overview because I felt like last time I didn't give you an adequate explanation of using large chunks and small chunks, especially for drinking glasses and such, and for reinforced glass that you just kind of have to punch a hole through and nothing else. Wrong layer. So thank you for watching. Sorry if it was too similar to last time, but this was just covering all my bases to make sure that you can get a good result. And next time I'll see you with either fracturing wood or smashing concrete. I also have a how to break bricks, but that won't be coming out for a little bit until I finish concrete. So yeah, enjoy, and thank you for watching.